Thank you very much. Well, this is a law program, the law show, and today we will have a conversation on the Marriage Governance Conference 2024 that is being organized by Marriage Right Ghana Limited. And this is a conversation that has caused us to have a conversation on asking the question whether your marriage is valid in law. And before we proceed on it, we would like to just mention that the Marriage Governance Conference 2024 will be hosted on Tuesday, the 27th of August 2024 at the British Council from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. The Marriage Governance Conference basically seeks to have speakers and panelists discussing matters relating to marriage, marriage policy, divorce, children, among other factors. And the Deputy Attorney General will be the guest speaker for the program. We have Shilaminka Premo, who happens to be the chairperson for the program. And there will be also solidarity message from other key stakeholders. Partners that have put this program together include the Registrar General Department with the Principal Marriage Officer, as well as the Attorney General's Department and Marriage Right Ghana Limited. The focus of this discussion that will be held on Tuesday basically seeks to touch on several subjects that are of interest to law. Many a time, people have asked why Marriage Governance Conference? And the simple answer that we have given for this conversation is simply that the entirety of the institution of marriage is governed by law, be it statutory law or customary law. And for that matter, it is very important for us to have a conversation that seeks to evaluate the compliance side of marriage. And that's what has informed today's topic. At this program, we have several speakers that have been lined up to have a conversation on it. One of them is Justice Sermsai, who will be speaking on the topic of whether or not, as to whether customary law marriage protects women. Is it a truth or a myth? Because there are several people who believe that customary law marriage does not protect women. There is a need for us to have a conversation around such a subject. We are also having a discussion on issues of enforcement of maintenance orders in this country. There are instances, because of the informal sector of the economy, when court makes maintenance for people to maintain their children, it does appear that people can easily avoid, and that happens to be the Achilles heels of maintenance. We have Iris Agriolins, who's a legal practitioner over 15 years experience, who will be delving into that topic. There are discussions as to whether or not we should have publication of bans in terms of ordinance marriage being done on social media and websites so as to achieve the true intent of that topic. And Mrs. Joyce Ajimatefa will be handling that topic. And an interesting topic which we will also be delving into will be as to whether or not you can protect your private property in marriage. How do you go about protecting your private property in marriage? Because the Christian position is that when you are married, the two has become one, and for that matter, does it prevent you from owning your private property in marriage? And that will be handled by a very senior judge, Justice Alexander Osetutu, who will touch on that particular subject. And also there's a discussion on adoption, whether adoption, there are issues of customary adoption where you could adopt your sister's child to take care of it, and view of the statutory position on adoption where you have to even pass through the court to handle adoption. We are having a conversation on it as to whether or not customary law position on adoption has been changed with regards to the statutory position on adoption. Apart from that, there are also compliance conversation regards to some of the challenges in registering customary marriage, in registering Islamic marriage. We are having conversations relating to licensing of venues. There are instances where churches have several branches across the country, and the position of the law insisting that you have to register with the local assembly. How do we handle? What are some of the challenges that we have with this? And licensing of marriage officers to, as is done by Attorney General's office. What are the issues and non-compliance with it? What is this legal effect if you go before a church in which the venue has not been licensed and the pastor has not been licensed? And these are serious conversations that we are having. And we believe strongly at the Marriage Governance Conference 2024, which is being held on Tuesday, 27th, panel members and people who attend, including lawyers and men of God, as well as local assembly, will be part of the conversation for us to discuss it. Welcome back. One of the speakers that I did mention for this Marriage Governance Conference happened to be Justice Alexander Osetutu, and I think viewers are very much conversant of Justice Alexander Osetutu, and he was here some time ago. And he'll be one of the speakers for this marriage governance conference. And one of the topics that he's handling is protecting your private property in marriage. And for that matter, I would like to ask the associated to what should attendees and people who are joining us both in person and online expect with regards to this, your topic that you'll be handling?
Yes. Thank you, Dennis. Yes, it's a normal thing for people to overlook the consequences when they are married, because at that stage, they will be blinded by the love. And we should bear in mind that marriage is not only a spiritual thing, but it also has social consequences as well as legal. So it's very necessary for couples, would-be couples, to know the consequences pertaining to their properties when it comes to divorce or maybe death. So it is this area that I would want to expound on for viewers to know the consequences that come with their property acquisition and distribution in the event of marriage dissolution or death by one of the parties.
And the interesting bit of it, Justice, is that when divorce include property matters, it sometimes take long and even rise all the way to, I'm here to see a Supreme Court decision which was solely on the divorce aspect when properties are not involved. And this is what to expect more. We'll take a short commercial break and come back and continue the conversation.
So we continue with the discussion. And I'm excited how it has begun. Why marriage governance?
Simply answer is that the entire institution of marriage is law. Many a time, people tend to forget that what is really required is the legal aspect of the marriage. From customary law, which most people ignore it easily, to the statutory law. And also to bring the country's attention to policies involving marriage. Because marriage has a way, what happens to be the substratum of family. And if we want to develop a country, marriage happens to be the panacea of development. In other countries, they have policies for marriage. But it's hard to read both manifestos of two dominant parties, and none of them talk about marriage, what the institution of marriage is about, what family, what in terms of their national orientation for family. Mm-hmm. So we are all interested in the hard way of development, which is the roads. We are not interested in the value system, which is being projected by the family, and we are quick to talk about it. So we think that there is a need for us to have conversations between major stakeholders on marriage to understand the whole governance aspect, the institutions of marriage, what they are doing. This is the only, marriage is the institution which you have about 3 ministries by law handling it. You have Ministry of Interior, Attorney General's Department, local government handling at the same time. Everybody is doing what they want at their sector. But it is important for us to have a conversation and look at the future of it, because if we want to develop as a people, the policy of marriage has to be laid out by the state, and we'll see how best.
This will not occur to the ordinary person.
Yes.
3 ministries. Yes. How are they involved in supervision or oversight on the issues of marriage?
Okay. So I say that what amounts to marriage is what the law has permitted to be marriage. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the type of marriages that is recognized by Ghanaian law, it's 3 in nature, which is the customary law marriage, which people call engagement or traditional marriage. The second one is Islamic marriage, which the law calls Mohammedan. The third one, which the law, affectionately calls Christian and other marriage, which is technically the civil marriage. Mm. Now, when it comes to registration of customary law marriage, it happens to be done at the local assembly. So you want a customary marriage certificate, you go to the local assembly.
Right.
Remember that the local assembly, the governing ministry of the local assembly is the Ministry of Local Government.
That's right.
That deals with it. When it comes to the registration of Islamic marriage for Islamic marriage certificate, which we had a conversation about 2 years ago, which we know the law is not being complied, so nobody in Ghana is validly married under Islam, sadly, is being the one who has the power to appoint Mohammedan or Islamic priest, which was done as far back as 1929 to 1932. Till that time, it is done by the Ministry of Interior. That is supposed to appoint marriage office, Islamic priests or marriage officers in Islamic marriage who confirms the marriage, and they have to go before the DCE to get their certificate done. Then when you move to the dominant one, the Christian marriage or ordinance marriage, those who want monogamous marriage, because it is not all Christian marriages that lead to monogamous marriage.
Okay.
That one, the appointment of marriage officers is being done by the Attorney General's department. He appoints the pastors to become marriage officers. But where we celebrate it is about 4 different places. One is at the local assembly. One is at the court, which is under the supervision of the Chief Justice. One is at the church, which is licensed or gazetted church. And the last one is a special license, which you do it at the principal marriage officer. So, and the database is not being shared. So if somebody marries at Ochemberiate or Bunkrugu Yoyo, we have no clue of having the data in Accra. Although the law requires it to be transmitted, but if they don't transmit it, the Attorney General's office cannot hold them accountable because those officers are appointed by the local government.
All right.
And so it is difficult. And that's why we need to sit down and look at the future of marriage, especially because the marriage data is an ancestry data. So that you'll be shocked about somebody having an identity that you have never met if we put the data together. And that's more reason why we need to, as we are putting Ghana card, we are trying to synchronize it. There is a need for us to have, and even in court, there are people who are divorced that they are not aware. So these are the various 4 ministries that handle it.
All right.
Which we think that we need to have a conversation around.
So I'll bring my Lord in quickly here. From how Dennis speaks about collection and centralization of the data, it presupposes that will make it easier to detect if somebody is getting into bigamy. It presupposes that it makes it easier to detect if perhaps someone has done, a customary marriage and it wants to take on, as it were, an ordinance marriage, and so on and so forth. Someone is divorced. It's easier to know that they are divorced.
Yes, and I would add that beyond the 3 ministries, I would add land. Because at the center, I will be speaking on land. At the center of marriage, when parties come together or couples come together, there's the likelihood that property may surface. And there are comprehensive provisions on property settlement. If you go to the Constitution, Article 22, at the end of the day, one may pass, or at the end if, God forbid, there's divorce, there are consequences for that. So I will rope in the Ministry of Lands. So, and they play a cardinal role because in our New Lands Act, for instance, Section 38 and Section 47 have to do with property alienation. And I believe you'll be delving more at the conference.
Right. We'll get to whether your marriage is valid.
Yes.
The question we are asking, are you sure you are married? But when I look at what you guys are trying to do in this marriage governance by Marry Right Ghana Limited in partnership with the Registrar General's Department and the Ministry of Justice and the Office of Attorney General and British Council, that's such a small place. And this is starting on Tuesday.
Yes.
How are you going to, because I've seen so much interest, even on social media.
Yes, we are doing both online and in person.
Online.
This happens to be our maiden conference that we are organizing. We felt the interest have exceeded our expectation. And it's also because thanks to the likes of the speakers who have agreed to be on the program. But this is just the beginning. To be a yearly conference, and the Deputy Attorney General, Diana, is really committed towards the cause. And although it's maybe a smaller conference, but we think that the key stakeholders, and we have a lot of churches and local assemblies coming on board, and we can look to the future. But British Council is also very interesting because if you look at the history of our marriages, it happens to be the colonial government that came in and decided to now made the repugnancy test, even trying to ignore our customary law, any form of customary law, including customary law form of marriage, and bring in the ordinance and try to put in all these legal regime. When we're left for our own independence, we have not changed it that much. So we cannot do away with the British when it comes to marriages because they have superimposed their ideology of marriage, which we have allowed them to cave into laws and are binding on us. But this is just the beginning of the conversation. We begin next year based on the interest. And the sad aspect of it is that most sponsors always want to look at what they can gain out of it. But marriage is a value issue. So you may not have your typical business around it, but I can assure any business person that You may think it has nothing to do with business till you go into divorce where your shares, have even been made a subject matter of the dispute and you lose your shares. That goes into it, and case law is there to establish some of
We're building society, and it begins with the family,
yes,
which is a very important unit. My guest on the law, this is your legal light, it is your help law. I'm Samson Ladiayenni. My guest on the law this afternoon are His Lordship Justice Alexander Osei Tutu. He's a justice of the Superior Court. He is a justice of the Court of Appeal, and you know him just too well on this platform because he's been very generous, magnanimous in offering his knowledge, particularly in the area of land law, and recently his book that he launched helped us to understand a number of things. Dennis Dwomoh is managing partner, Law Plus, also not a stranger to this platform. So the question we are asking, and we'll come to you for your comments and questions shortly, is, are you sure you are married? First things first.
yes.
What should I look out for in answering this question?
You first have to go back to the foundation, which is the law governing marriages.
Yes, so I am married.
Yes.
And you are asking, am I sure I am married?
Yes.
What should I look at to be sure if I am or am not?
Okay, so that's back again. You look at the law. The law gives 3 types of marriages,
Right.
which is the customary law marriage, the Islamic marriage, and the civil marriage. One of the biggest challenges that comes with customary law marriage, because it involves family, there are instances where, and especially it happens where the man is deceased and the family says that we don't know of this woman. So you have to, and especially when it comes to customary law marriages, people don't proceed to get a marriage certificate, which the law presumes that once you have a marriage certificate, you are presumed that you are validly married, unless then the burden of proof will then shift to the person who is challenging the marriage. So if you are going to get married under customary law, question, which customary law did you marry under? Can a foreigner, can 2 foreigners, 2 Japanese come to Ghana and say we are marrying under Ashanti customary law or Frafra customary law? What determines the customary law? We have had situations for those of us who have intertribal marriages. And some say, I know it very well. So who determines it? Did we marry in accordance with Frafra customary law or married in accordance with Ewe customary law? And even among the Ewe customary law, which aspect of the Ewe customary law? So we have seen that the incidence of marriage is often, because you are going for the woman's hand in marriage, it will be determined by the customary law of the woman. Gradually, because of what the concept that Benza Bones and academics have talked about, a canonization of customary law. You have seen situations where you go for a typical Gonja marriage and they are negotiating like accounts. The whole marriage ceremony has now become a chairman, the language, and I'm asking myself, what form of course, because I am privileged to know the people involved.
Is it the case that if they deviate, there will be a question of validity?
Of course. So we need to ask yourself, which customary law are you, what type of customary law marriage are you conducting? So that when an issue comes before the judge, and we are deciding to decide whether or not this marriage, the person's other party says that they didn't validly marry the person. You say that you were very, then the question comes in, this woman that you went for his hand in marriage, what type of customary law? If it's Ashanti customary law, the ingredients of what amounts to Ashanti may be different from every customary law. The things that they took for the dowry may be different. The same for Frafra, Gonja, Kasina, or whatever thing it is. But I've realized that for those of us who have moved from the village and in Accra, I think the things that we are doing, if it's being called into question one day, we may have a problem. That's with customary law.
Okay.
With regards to Islamic marriage, the law further goes ahead to say that if you do not register the Islamic marriage, it is invalid. And we have had a conversation 2 years ago, and there's no legal regime, administrative regime in Ghana now that registers Islamic marriage. So all our friends who are holding this may be coming from the sect, which is not recognized by the law. That you can have a problem if you register the marriage and if you go for the certificate, but it has to be registered to gain its validity. And the almighty ordinance marriage is a civil marriage. That one is you have had Mrs. Owari talking about it. Right. Although the law talks about it as Christian and other marriages, I'm sorry to say that it's a civil marriage. There are statutory requirements that goes with it. To the extent that if you miss any of the statutory requirements, you have a problem. So, for instance, with the church marriage, question number 1. Did the place that you are marrying, was it a venue that is gazetted by the local assembly or regional coordinator?
Or as we commonly say, licensed.
Licensed. If it's not, I'm sorry to tell you that what you had may be a religious ceremony, but not an exclusive marriage as you expected under monogamous marriage. So a lot of people are married in the Christian way, which is a faith issue. It has nothing to do with the statute. So even if you're a Catholic, for those of us who are Catholics, you married another church, because of our faith, we have to come back to the church and marry again. The law allows it because it's your religious freedom. However, when it comes to the statutory requirement of it, ask yourself whether or not you are validly married under civil marriages, and especially those who married in church. The pastor who celebrated the marriage, was he licensed? If he was not licensed, you may have a problem in case the validity of the marriage is called in question. And that's one reason why most churches insist for you to do the house marriage, because they know that in case there's a problem with monogamous marriage and then you're able to establish customary marriage, at least that one will save you. So these are the questions that you have to ask yourself, depending on it. But most people are being deceived that statutory marriage is always the best.
We'll pick some of them one after the other. But let me go to my Lord, because I want to find out what he is also thinking about. If I ask myself the question, am I married? What should go into that thinking to satisfy myself that I am truly married?
Thank you, Samson. The underlying elements of marriage have to do with, one, the consent of the couple, meaning that marriage is consensual. It cannot be imposed on one of the couples. And it is for adults, not for children. So we, under the common law or under our statute, the law has been fixed at 18. So if you are below 18, you are not expected to marry.
If you are below 18, you get into it.
Yes.
Everything that has been done
will not be recognized as valid.
Okay.
Yes. It's interesting because if you go to the Criminal Act, a person needs to attain the age of 16 to be able to have sex. And the marriage age is 18. So you ask yourself, in between that 17 before the person gets to 18, what is it for? But whatever it is, the marriage age in Ghana is 18. And beyond that, there should be the payment of the bride price. But this has for several decades been an issue. Sometimes the man will go with some drinks to see the family members, which we call akotoejan. There are two opinions. Some think that akotoejan is not valid marriage. They will say, oh, take this drink. The man will come and show his face, give some drinks and say, I'm going to prepare and come back. By the time you realize the man had impregnated the woman and they have 3, 4, 5 children. And the question is whether it is a valid marriage. There are two schools of thought. Some decisions are to the effect that because the marriage was not, that drink was what we call akotoejan, it does not count. Others also believe that it is a valid marriage. And the other thing we expect the marriage to have is that it must be consummated. So if you go through the processes and after the wedding, there's no sex. The marriage will not be deemed to have been perfected. And the last is the two must live in the eyes of the world as husband and wife. So basically, these are the elements, the underlying elements or ingredients of marriage.
So a woman is married to a man in the ordinance way. And they have lived for a year. They haven't had sex. One cannot talk about divorce.
Because the marriage is not consummated, it's not complete, so there's no marriage.
Regardless that they have lived for 1 year, they have done the wedding, they have done all that needs to be done, signed all the papers.
Regardless, so should the marriage go to court, it will not be. We have two ways of bringing a marriage to an end. We have dissolution of the marriage and annulment. Dissolution of the marriage comes in where the marriage went through all these processes and it was perfected. At the end of the day, if the two parties cannot continue with the relationship, they go to court. Because the marriage was perfected, the marriage will be dissolved.
Okay.
Will be declared as having come to an end.
That is divorce.
That is divorce. But where any of the ingredients is missing, like if the marriage was not consummated, there was no sex. If you are going to court, you don't go to court to dissolve the marriage. You go to court for the court to declare that the marriage in the first place never existed. And that is what we call annulment.
It never existed.
It never existed in the eyes of the law. The couple might have thought that they were married, but the law, because it was not perfected, the law would treat it as never having come into being.
Okay, very interesting. So you're still here on the law. This is your legal light. It is your health law. And we are just giving you a sneak peek into the marriage governance, a very important conference that is happening from Tuesday at the British Council here in Accra. It's in the morning.
Yes, morning to afternoon. So
okay. So what time?
9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I've seen the lists. That's a host of fine legal minds that you have in there. But let's stay here.
Yes.
You mentioned customary, ordinance, and Islamic. Now, in the customary marriage, before I even intervened, I heard you speak about questions that people ask, whether or not the customary marriage is something that is worth it. What are some of the things that could make the customary marriage, in the eyes of the law, something that I can hold on to, just like the civil marriage?
In the eyes of the law, customary marriage has the same benefit in terms of property, in terms of anything, as ordinance marriage. The only difference is that with customary marriage, it cannot be a ground for divorce. Adultery cannot be a ground for divorce. But you can go to court if there are property issues for the same rights that goes with it. But other benefits of customary marriage...
Hold on. When I marry in the customary way...
Yes.
And there's adultery...
Yes.
It's not the basis for me to seek divorce.
Yes. Because customary law in law does not know adultery as a ground for divorce. Because of the fact that the man... Adultery on the part of the man, by the way. The man can have additional women. But when it comes to ordinance, because it's monogamous, 1:1, adultery by the statute, Matrimonial Causes Act, is a ground for divorce. That goes with it. Apart from that, under Ashanti customary law, when your wife owes somebody, it's your debt as a husband. Under Ashanti customary law. So there are certain benefits that each custom gave to protect its women, which statutory law may not have it. Because under statutory law, I cannot see how if my wife goes into a contract and decides to default, I being held liable, and that's more, these are some of the customary things that have been read into even criminal to the extent that when the police come and your brother has committed a crime, they start to target you and arrest you with the hope that you go and bring your brother. Because in their head, they are thinking...
Which is wrong.
Which is wrong. It's not lawful, but I'm just saying that there seems to be a perception around. That is a topic that somebody... But any benefit that one can go for under customary, under statutory, can be done. But one of the things that we have realized is that, and when Justice was speaking, he realized that he mentioned Akoto-Ejan, he mentioned... And that's back to the point of that canonization that I spoke with. I do believe that, I don't think there will be a Akoto-Ejan under Frafra customary law. I do not know. But that's why we also have to speak to ourselves as a country, how the Constitution gave a mandate to the National House of Chiefs to try and codify our customary law, but we have not funded it. So gradually, some people will go for a customary law list, and there's iPad in it.
So we understand.
Yes.
These days, there's iPad in it. There are more things than iPad. So there are some who have the impression that because you can register a customary law marriage, once you register it, it may assume the status of an ordinance marriage.
Not at all. Not at all. It does not. Because first of all, the customary law marriage certificate that you get is different from the ordinance marriage certificate. It's different. But what has come based on experience and working with this sector is that sometimes people believe that because they went to sign at the assembly, they were getting, they will say, "Make assembly, they call register." But the assembly, they will ask you, "What type of marriage are you coming for?" And remember, with customary marriage, you go and register after the celebration. With ordinance marriage, the entire celebration is done at the assembly. So if the entire celebration...
And when you say celebration, you mean...
The marriage itself.
The marriage ritual. Events.
Okay. Happens at the assembly. And before even the marriage ritual, they will give you a registrar's license, which is the permission to marry. They would have done the publication of bans. And that's why we are having a conversation whether the old way of doing publication of bans should be allowed to where they do it just at the assembly. Should we move publication of bans to websites and social media so that the true intent of the legislator can be achieved? Okay. So if we take you to assembly to go and sign, and I've seen that when it comes to my brothers who are of the Islamic faith, when they go there, the actual intention starts with going to register the Islamic marriage. But when they get there and there's no certificate for Islamic marriage, they are pushed to register it under customary marriage certificate. So your certificate is different, and so you get a certificate, but it's different. But it's still valid marriage under law.
My guest, Dennis Dwomoh, he's managing partner, Law Plus, and Justice Alexander Osei-Tutu is a justice of the Court of Appeal, and they are assisting us. We're just trying to get steal something small from them before they begin the Marriage Governance Conference on Tuesday at the British Council. So if you go to the local assembly to register your customary law, you are registering it. It does not get the same status as an ordinance marriage because, like Dennis said, that marriage is potentially polygamous. You have agreed and understood that the man is entitled at any time to take on the next person, 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as the man can afford.
Let me correct this. I don't want a situation where we always insist on the man. I'm yet to see a customary. If the customary law of that marriage, I'm yet to see one. But if the customary law of that marriage allows the woman to marry 2 men, maybe you can go ahead and marry. But I'm yet to see that customary marriage.
Right.
Because it's governed by custom.
And that on the basis of that, unlike ordinance marriage, where if there is adultery on the part of the man, you can seek divorce. In that kind of marriage, the customary marriage, if there's adultery, you can use that to seek divorce.
On the part of the man.
On the part of the man. And we have distinguished between dissolution, as in a divorce, and annulment of the marriage, because the marriage never existed in the eyes of the law. My Lord, we want to promote our culture, indigenous culture. Why should my registration of the marriage not entitle me to all the benefits that one will get if they had done the ordinance marriage?
Thank you, Samson. Our laws, if you go to Article 11.1, where the laws of Ghana are listed, customary law is one of them. And like Dennis earlier said, there are 3 types of marriages. You decide the one you want. They all have their repercussions. So if you opt for the customary one, like you said, customary law is potentially polygamous. You say you want customary law, it means that you agree that your partner can go in for other persons. You decide what you want. So if you do not want to go by the customary law consequences, then you opt for the ordinance, which is purely monogamous. And I would want to add 2 things. One, when it comes to the dissolution of the marriage, with customary law, it's quite flexible. Customary law is dissolved customary. You don't have to go to court. But if you marry under the ordinance, that is where you'll be struggling. You go to court, it can take months, years, before the court will declare that this day will decree and declare that the marriage has come to an end. But it's one advantage that the customary law, you can meet, the 2 families meet, and they finish everything.
But people still have the option to seek a dissolution of a customary marriage in court.
Yes, it is where there are other, like, ancillary reliefs. Like when it comes to children, which of the, maybe they do not understand. The man would want to have the children, the woman would also want to have the children. When it comes to property, yes, the marriage was dissolved, but the man has assets, the woman would want some, and there's that misunderstanding. So the law allows that where there are other issues, then you can take it to court. But when it comes to only the dissolution, it can be, customary marriage can be dissolved customary without having to go to court. But in the case of marriage under the ordinance, you are bound, it's only the court that can dissolve the marriage. And another issue too, or another distinction is, when it comes to property that was willed by one of the parties, under Section 38 of the Matrimonial Causes Act, it says that once there's a divorce or dissolution of the marriage, any property which was willed by one of the parties for the other automatically lapses. In other words, it automatically comes to an end. If during the subsistence of the marriage, let's say the man in his will gave some properties to the woman, immediately the marriage is dissolved. That will comes to an end. That disposition, and it reverts, goes back to the man. So, and this is only applicable if you read the law carefully. It says marriage under this act, and the Matrimonial Causes Act basically regulates marriage under the ordinance, unless there are ancillary reliefs, as I did indicate.
So, just
and
okay.
You may want to know then, if I married and registered it, I married customary and registered it, why is the relevance of the registration? As you earlier, the main relevance of the registration of the customary law is that after the divorce or death of one of the parties, it serves as evidence, because there are instances where if, let's say, the woman has issues with the man's...
As in children?
No, sometimes the property, they will say, oh, he never married him. And there will be, but once you have that certificate, it is the presumption, or it speaks for you, that the man actually married the woman.
And that's why you'll be talking about protecting your private property in marriage. Protecting your private property in marriage. At the marriage, it's supposed to be two people who have come together as one. So who is supposed to protect their property in the marriage? Are they not supposed to be happy that my husband has this, fine, we are all good. My wife has this, we are all good. Is that not it?
We are talking about
right now.
We are talking about properties you brought into the marriage. Before the marriage, you came from somewhere. And the law, if you read the law carefully, it talks about property acquired during the marriage. And sometimes there's difficulty knowing which property was acquired before the marriage and which property was acquired during the subsistence of the marriage. So that's why the rest will be left.
Oh, Charlie. All right. So that's an interesting teaser there. So you can get the full gist of it. But at least you are getting to know that property acquired before the marriage may not be affected if the marriage is dissolved. But property acquired during the marriage, during the subsistence of the marriage, is definitely affected upon dissolution of the marriage. But that's one too. There's even a caveat, because it is the basis on how it is acquired may also come in. Yes.
So one thing that we have realized that there is also a social aspect of this whole marriage, which may not be in accordance with law. I can tell that certain people are married under ordinance, but for social acceptance, they still go back to the house to do dissolution of the marriage, which has no effect in law. Okay. But just for the understanding of the family that they are involved in it, I have seen people who have done ordinance marriage and still go back. So they may have married in the United States or they are married under jurisdictions, validly married, but for the acceptance of the social acceptance of the family, they go back and perform another set of marriage, which in operation of the law, in the eyes of the law, It's just a party that you are having. Okay? And so those are some of the social dynamics.
Let me announce that the phone lines are activated now. You can call and ask questions that may be bothering your mind now. If you have spotted one or two things that make your marriage shaky, you can ask the question, are you sure you are married? Either under customary law, under Islamic marriage, or under ordinance, are you sure you are? But you were talking about the ordinance marriage and situating it in the church, and the priest who is officiating it being someone who has been properly so gazetted or licensed to do it, and also the building within which you are doing it, whether it has been properly so permitted to do what is going on. There are people who decide to do it in maybe a hotel. We see it abroad. They do it at the beachfront. They do it almost anywhere they want to do it. Why can't we do the same?
So at every marriage, I always say that there are three interplays.
Okay.
There is the religious side, there is the social event, and there is the legal side. Many a time, now the focus of our generation is that of the social event. So they are looking at a beach wedding. How do I bring it, the photography, the videography? Yeah,
so how do I do it there and keep it valid? I want to know.
So what often is advisable, because of some of these validity, is that why don't you do your special license with the principal marriage officer, get some simple ceremony to go through, because remember, all these special lines and ordinance marriage, you don't even need your family to marry.
What do you mean by that? Special license?
So, very well. So under the law, we have talked about the Christian marriage or the civil marriage.
That's right.
The law gives three ways of marrying. You need a license before you do the celebration. It's like before you can drive a car, you need to go for a driver's license before you drive a car. So for you to marry under monogamy, for your marriage to be exclusive, there are three ways you can go about it. You can go for registrar's license, which is basically going for the license from the assembly or the court to marry. And that is when they will do you apply, they do the publication of banns for 21 days at the court or at the assembly. That is a registrar's license to marry. Or you have the marriage officer certificate, which is basically, marriage officers are basically the ministers of religion who have been given public duty to perform and have been appointed by the state. So those are the pastors or ministers of religion to do that.
Okay.
And those ones you marry under that license. And then you have a special license in which, by reason of the urgency of the matter, the law waives the 21 days publication of notice and goes straight to it by reason of the person being sick, or there are certain urgent matters. They waive those requirements for you. So what is advisable sometimes is that have your compliance with the law. Marry in accordance with the Registrar General's principal marriage officer, or marry in accordance with the registrar, and then have time for your social event. Because in your quest of focusing on the social event, you may ignore the law and have a problem.
Malo, can you explain that to us again? That I want the marriage to be officiated at a place other than a church. And perhaps, okay, I was going to say, maybe not by a minister of religion. How can I do that and keep it valid?
Like Dennis said, you need a special license. You go to the Registrar General, and there are rules for each of them.
Right.
If you want to marry in the church, the law says there must be 3 publication of banns. That's the 3 weeks. And even sometimes some churches don't comply. It must be in English, and it must also be in a language
people understand
of the area. So if you are in the Ashanti region, it will have to be Twi and English. But sometimes they either use English.
Just a second. I understand we have some difficulties with our lines. But Mavis, successfully you are online. Let's hear you. You're calling from Odumase Krobo. What's your question?
Hello.
Mavis, go ahead.
Yes, please, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
I bought a land around 2009, and I got married 2011. Whilst I was trying to build the house, the man was not supporting, so I have to do everything by myself. And now I have rented the apartment. The man is maltreating me. I want to come out of the marriage. So what is my chances?
What did you say? Did you say the man assisted you to build on the land?
No, I bought the land myself before I got married.
Yes, but whilst you are in the marriage, then you built on the land.
Yes, I built the house myself.
Without the man's support whatsoever?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All
I
right.
have my documents.
Okay, thank you very much. You're running out of time. Yes.
Yes, so that is what on Tuesday I will be explaining the strategy to go about it. So I entreat you to register for the...
There are situations also like this, that the person has the land, maybe it's the woman's land, then they get married, and then, no, it's maybe a family property giving to one of them, and then they marry, and then they build on that land. Does it become their own, or it is for the family?
Property, yes. So Tuesday I will be expanding on it.
Okay.
Where it is a family property, at the end of the day, it will revert to the family.
It doesn't matter that you are the ones, the couple spend their money to build on it.
It doesn't matter. But there's this equitable principle which allows the couple to have a life interest in the property. But they cannot alienate the property.
They can't give it to somebody else. They can't sell it.
Yeah, you can live in it, but you can't sell it.
Okay.
Or if one dies, it cannot go to the other.
In Mavis's case, at the beginning, it's her property. But she gets it, she takes it into the marriage, and then she begins to build. And she says she builds it
So if the
by
man
herself.
substantially supported...
She says no.
And that's why you need something called prenuptial agreement. From the word go. If
Are they recognized in Ghana?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
There's no law which is against it. That before you enter into the marriage, you should know the properties the couple, each of the couple is.
All right. So we've just run out of time, and this is how it's going to happen. The Speaker, Justice Stramsine, is talking about customary marriage does not protect women. Truth or myth? Then we have Vivian Lamte. She'll be speaking on allowing unconstitutionality to trump against Muslims. Iris Agre-Oleans, you know her on this platform as well. She'll be speaking about enforcement of maintenance orders, the Achilles heel of welfare principle. You remember her in the Odate Lamte case? Right. Dr. Mame Abena Mensah-Bozu. Right. Customary adoption, legislating to oust customary law, and a lot other subjects by many other very, very fine legal minds, including my lord here, who will be speaking on protecting your private property in marriage. Thank you so much, Justice Osei-Tutu, and also Dennis J. Dwomoh. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, this has been The Law. It's your legal light. It is your health law.